So it's day 2 of my 30-day vlog challenge, and today I'm going to be talking about something that is a big challenge for me personally. It's called imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, if you're not familiar, means that you don't feel adequate to be doing what you're doing. For me, a lot it's being the CEO of Active Duty Passive Income. Like, we're the most prominent military real estate investing community and education company out there. So who am I to be teaching people on real estate? Even though I have done real estate, I still have that doubt in my mind. I have acquired millions of dollars of real estate, and it creates thousands of dollars of cash flow every month for me and my parents. Actually, it's going to help them retire better. But still, I have those creeping doubts, like, who am I to be teaching this? Especially in the early days when I was just starting out. Well, here is about 5 points I'm going to make, and I'm probably going to sprinkle in some other mindset isms in between. Here's 5 ways that I combat imposter syndrome, and I'll tell little stories about what has helped me along the way and who has helped me along the way. But it's mostly like it's the mindsets that I have that I kind of like go through all 5 of them sometimes just to kick that whole imposter syndrome down the curb. So the first one I'm going to talk about, okay, is it's not even really a mindset thing. Well, let's call it embracing inadequacy. Let's call it that. And I'll give you a little story. I had a friend, I still have a friend, great friend of mine from the Naval Academy, who, when he was in New York City, he didn't know where to go, or he didn't know how to get to where he was going. And back then, iPhones were available, but not as kind of like readily available. I don't know, maybe he still had a flip phone at the time. He just wasn't sure how to get to a certain place. So he just came up to a random stranger and was like, "Hi, I'm an idiot. Can you please tell me how to get to where I'm, looking forward to go?" And it was hilarious. It would completely diffuse the situation. He didn't have to worry about being an imposter or somebody that knew how to get to where he was going. He was just very open with anybody around him and those that he asked. He was like, "Hey, I'm an idiot. Can you please help me?" It was a little bit over the top, of course, but that was his style, and it helped him just kind of like not worry about it at all. He embraced not knowing, and in fact, that's what he prided himself sometimes in, not knowing a certain thing and just being okay with others teaching him. And so I think that there's a lesson to be learned from that, and that helps me sometimes with my imposter syndrome. It's like, hey, I don't know. Let me just go and ask somebody. All right, and I actually had to write these down. So number 2 comes from one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Alex Hormozy, and he talks about how and I'm sure he maybe wasn't the one that came up with this concept, but like he talks about how by definition you're always going to be inadequate if you're trying to get to the next level. And I never thought of it that way. It sounds so rudimentary and basic, but like if you think about it, if you get to the next level, right, you are always going to feel inadequate. Think about sports. Think about school. Every single time you took a new class or you leveled up from, like, let's say junior varsity to varsity, or then whatever, college, pro, whatever, like if you were an athlete and you've gone through those cycles, every single time you have this feeling of feeling inadequate, right? And that's normal because now you are in a new playing field, and by definition, because you don't have experience at that level, you are inadequate potentially. But embracing that and battling that and facing it head on, and being ready to just be inadequate, but also being ready to conquer that playing field so you can move on to the next one, that's the mindset that helps you just kind of get through it. And so for me as the CEO, I had to remind myself, no, I just need to embrace this and I need to be okay with it. And accept that it is a symptom or a mark of growth. If I'm ever feeling like, oh, I got this, I'm totally adequate all the time, then I'm probably not growing. And I'm not saying it's not good to be confident. In fact, I think confidence is incredibly important for success. But what I'm saying is, if I'm constantly just feeling comfortable, then I'm probably not growing. It's good to feel inadequate, in my opinion. And so embracing that helps me with my imposter syndrome. Okay? So point number 3, let me grab my phone real quick. Everyone needs a coach. This isn't, you're probably wondering, like, how does this help with imposter syndrome? I started imagining myself, as a CEO or somebody leading a group project, anything, right, as kind of a coach. Because if you think of like Michael Jordan and like Phil Jackson, like Michael Jordan obviously played better than Phil Jackson. And whoever Michael Phelps's coach was, obviously Michael Phelps swam better than his coach, right? There's tons of athletes, I'm sure. I'm not huge into sports, so I can't give you all the different analogies, but I'm sure that a lot of different coaches were not actually as skilled or technically or physically as capable as those that they were coaching. So you could ask yourself, like, who are they to be coaching their, student, their mentee, or whoever the athlete is? Well, they have a specific vantage point. When you're in your own body, sometimes, it's difficult to see yourself from an angle. I mean, just physically, it's difficult to see what you're doing if your eyeballs are in your head, right? And for example, I know swimming, I used to swim. It's really important to keep your head at a certain level and make sure your elbow comes out when you're doing your stroke, right? And have it come out really high. You might not be able to notice. You think your muscles are telling you you're lifting your elbow high enough as you're reaching, but turns out you're not, because you're fatigued and you didn't notice that you weren't doing the form right. So a coach can help you. Similarly, in entrepreneurship, business, real estate investing, whatever, similar in any kind of professional environment, you might not notice that you're not doing the things you should be doing, even if it's basic stuff. Additionally, a coach is somebody who maybe sees multiple people. Like in my company, I see multiple people from my vantage point of analyzing how every function can do its job better. And the person in that seat, I'm able to see all the functions play out, and I'm able to learn from what other functions are doing well. Even if I'm learning it for the first time, I'm like, wow, whatever that individual did, that worked out great. And then now my frame of reference has shifted, and I can maybe recommend others do the same thing, and I can coach them on it. And then I can tell them that story of when it worked out for somebody else as a way to sell them on that concept. Because in my mind, everything in life is sales. And you can sell and influence the best through stories. And so it's not that maybe I don't have experience as a CEO prior to ADPI, right? The military definitely didn't give me that experience. I was flying helicopters for a while, then I turned public affairs officer, and it's called Comstrat in the Marine Corps. Like, none of that actually helped me be better at leading an online education community, right? Some of the maybe communication skills helped, but I was largely inadequate to be a CEO, so to speak. But again, because I was in that position, it helped me become the most adequate to provide the type of leadership guidance and accountability necessary because of my position, purely because of the role I was playing and the vantage point it provided. I wasn't stuck in a certain role, and stuck is a negative term. I wasn't in a certain role with certain responsibilities. I'm able as a CEO to step away and look from a different angle and help coach everybody along. And the interesting thing is if your team respects that relationship, they know that your job needs to be at that position, because then you can coach them, and you know that they need to be kind of in the trenches, blinders on, because that's the best way they're going to be specialized and they're going to do an awesome job in their role. Then if you guys are both respectful of that relationship, magic really happens. I've seen it, and I can't wait to see how we bust through every single level as a company as we continue growing. All right. Sorry, that was a long one. All right. I skipped one. So that was actually point number 4. So let's go back to point number 3. Crash test dummy. This is one of my favorite mindsets when I'm thinking about imposter syndrome. Is I imagine myself as, hey, I'm just going to be the crash test dummy for others, especially when it's like an education community like ours, when I'm supposed to be leading the charge. Who am I to be teaching anybody if I haven't done it proficiently, maybe multiple times? Maybe I haven't reached the 10,000 hour rule, right, by like Malcolm Gladwell to be considered an expert. Well, truthfully, what is an expert? My dad used to tell me that a professional is just somebody that gets paid for what they do. So that really simplified the definition in my head. I was like, well, maybe I'm somebody that learns the hard way. I'm okay with taking, making the mistakes in advance of somebody else. I'm that crash test dummy. And then I relay what I have learned and basically what I have determined as a result of that to help guide them on their path, right? And maybe that's all that is necessary in this position. Maybe that is hugely valuable to somebody, to have somebody else go through all the trials and tribulations and relay that information to them and coach them on how to either how you succeeded or the mistakes you made to make sure they don't make the same mistakes. And so that to me, just mentally telling people like audibly out loud, like, hey, let me be your crash test dummy. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to relay everything I'm learning. Really, that's what I plan on doing through this vlog a lot too. That might be what helps those that I'm leading immensely. And boom, there's the value relationship created. So that's point number 3, which I'm doing as number 4 for this video. And then last but not least, I made a whole video about this. This is one of my first YouTube videos ever. It was called Positive Mental Feedback Loop. So I noticed that oftentimes I would be really scared when I'd start something. Like, for example, I remember this vividly for some reason, like Calculus 2 was the first calculus class I took at the Naval Academy, and I was terrified. I was like, holy cow, this is just nutso amount of information and very difficult concepts. And it was given to us so fast. And then homework was almost not cared about as much. And all that mattered was the test. So it was like make or break constantly. We'd take quizzes and tests, and it was like, you either sink or swim. It was all on me at that point, no hand holding. And so what I was just terrified up front. And then come towards the end of the year, or that semester, I ended up crushing it. I was like number 2 in my class. And that's not to gloat or toot my horn here. The point is that ability, that success I had was something I ended up looking back on every single semester. Because every single time that I had another class that I felt like, wow, I am inadequate, or this is difficult, or, this is so hard, I would remember the feeling that I had the previous semester in that Calculus 2 class. And I remember that I'd felt the exact same way, and that all it took was for me to get through the semester, and that I had that other feeling, that positive feeling of being able to look back and be like, wow, I came a long way. And you hear people say that all the time, like, oh, we came a long way. Wow, this is crazy. Well, what if you harness the memory of that feeling of coming a long way and how proud you feel of yourself? What if you harness that as a superpower? And you remind yourself that that's how you're going to feel every single new challenge you face, right? So every single new challenge, you're like, hey, this might seem difficult, but in the very near future, when I get through this challenge, I'm going to look back and I'm going to be so proud of myself. In fact, I'm telling myself that right now about some of the challenges I'm having just while I'm doing this video, and it's making me feel better already. I'm not kidding. It's a powerful tool. And some people look at it differently. There's just different ways of thinking about it. Like Brandon Turner, I think he talks about the fog. Like, you can't see through the fog until you start stepping through it. Like, it's not going to clear up unless you actually step through the fog. You have to take those steps without being able to see the end. I believe Martin Luther King Jr. said something, and I can't remember, don't quote me on this, but like, you don't see you have to take this first step of the staircase even though you don't see the top. Like, as an analogy, you know already just by listening to what I just said that makes sense. You're like, yeah, you might not know every step, but you have to keep taking steps to get to the top, right? So it's similar in life. Like, you just have to keep one foot in front of the other. Eventually you'll get to the top, and eventually you'll be able to look back down and be like, wow, I made it, right? So that's a pretty long day 2 vlog. Hope you guys are enjoying these. Please give me any comments down below. And if this is the first video you're watching of mine, my name is Mark Jancic. I'm a full-time entrepreneur real estate investor. I started Active Duty Passive Income, or ADPI, as a little bit of a side hustle. I wanted to learn about online business, and as I was doing real estate investing. And then I married the two up, and I decided to teach people what I was doing in real estate. And all of a sudden, I grew a very large team, and they're incredible, and they've done way more real estate and way cooler things than I ever could have done by myself. And so we're doing it all together now, and it's awesome. And they've surpassed a lot of things that I have done, and it's just awesome and humbling to see. And so if you're in the military or a veteran or a military family member and you're like, hey, I want to learn about real estate investing and entrepreneurship, check out activedutypassiveincome.com. And that's pretty much it. We got a lot of cool education and an awesome community. So I'll talk to you guys later. Let me click the button.